Hello, everyone. My name is Sara Al Haddad, and I'm from Palestine and Gaza Strip. I go to the school Sukaina, Hussain, which is located in Deir al-Balah. And as for my presentation today, my question is, what is the history and culture of storytelling across the Arab world? As for my presenter's promise, I promise that I'm not an expert, but that I try to learn as much as I could to satisfy my curiosity about this topic. Someone here might know more than me, so please correct me, ask questions, and contribute, but do it nicely. I'm not trying to persuade you of my agenda or convince you to take action. My only hope is that my presentation might cultivate your own curiosity. As for my outline, I'm first going to be zooming out and talking about the history behind Arabic storytelling, and then zooming in on storytelling traditions across the Arab world, specifically in two countries, Mauritania and Lebanon, and finally, storytelling in the Arab world nowadays. So I'm pretty sure it's almost impossible to find anyone not familiar with the stories of Aladdin, Ali Baba, or Sinbad, amongst many others, or terms such as genie and ghoul, all of which came to be known to the West through the tales of the 1001 Nights, a work of Arabic storytelling that has been a shaping influence on Oriental literary material for Western creative writers, and the reason why I chose to research the art of storytelling in the Arab world. So in the Arab world, stories were told through a traditional one-man narrative called the Hakawati. Now, Hakawati comes from a fusion of two Arabic words, the first being Hikaya, which means the story, and the second being Haki, which means to talk. And the person who would tell these tales was a Hakawati. So in cultures of the Middle East, the Hakawati once played a very central role in society. They drew large crowds, told culture, tales, and folklore. And in cities, the usual location for Hakawatis to tell their stories were cafes. But even within Arab cultures, the style of storytelling can differ. So for example, in Syria, the storytelling usually happens inside of a cafe, while in Libya, storytellers tend to stand on a stage and deliver their story in the form of poetry. On the other hand, in Morocco, the storyteller usually sits in the middle of a circle of spectators. And lastly, in Egypt, the storyteller often has a abada, which is a simple string instrument to accompany the story. So storytelling has always been a part of Arab culture. It was the first and only form of entertainment for most people back when the idea was invented. It's usually done at night, under palm trees, under palm trees, and in desert lands, in tribal huts and homes. And people from all over would gather around to hear the narrated stories and intertwined tales in shocking plotlines. So they traditionally told stories about heroes with exciting themes, such as helping the weak against aggressors, like the hero Sara Al Haddad al-Ayyubi, who was a courageous Muslim leader of the Ayyubi dynasty, and legends like that of the Companions of the Cave, who are basically a group of righteous men that avoided execution because of God's guidance. So this caused them to enter into a deep sleep in the narrow chamber of a cave, a sleep that lasted for over 3 centuries, so over 300 years. To this day, storytelling remains a very important tradition in Arab culture, especially during Ramadan. So in Islam, Ramadan is known as the holy month of fasting for Muslims. Every year, families prepare Arabic sweets for gahwa, which is a type of Arabic coffee, and after iftar, which is the meal eaten at sunset to break the fast for Muslims. It is a tradition in most households to gather in the living room and tell stories. So, moving on to storytelling traditions across the Arab world, as I've mentioned previously, the most common form of entertainment in the Middle East used to be that of the Hakawati. Now, in Lebanon specifically, villages have their own Hakawati, but the most gifted of them usually left their homes and traveled around the country to earn their living. So they told traditional stories from the 1001 Nights that I recommend everyone to read, chronicles of legendary Arab heroes such as Ansar, who is a pre-Islamic Arab knight and poet, or even stories from the Quran. They usually experimented with pitch, tone, accent, and the storyteller usually impersonates the many characters talked about in the tale that they're sharing. So a Hakawati could tell the same story daily over several months, always ending on a cliffhanger to keep his or her audience entertained. And according to legend, in the 18th century, Ahmed al-Sidawi, one of the best storytellers of his time, told the story of King Baybars for 372 evenings in a cafe. This may have been a record for the longest stories ever told in that specific historic time period. It is also said that Al-Fidawi cut the story short because the Ottoman governor begged him to finish it. So in Lebanon, it's often said that it was storytellers who occupied the second most important position in the country, because telling a story involved communicating with the masses. And kings too depended on storytellers to spread their message. So moving on to the second country and last that I'm going to be talking about, Mauritania. So as for Mauritania, written literature is very limited. But even so, oral storytelling is still an age-old Mauritanian tradition. So the Igbo, who are the traditional storytellers in Mauritania, and please correct me and forgive me if I'm pronouncing this wrong. So the Igbo is the entertainer of the Moors and the Western Sahara and Mauritania. There are only a few hundred of them, and they usually work in family groups, traveling between castes and tribes. They traditionally recounted stories for events such as weddings, circumcision, or for visitors amongst the Hussain or warrior tribes. So one traditional path of the Igbo was to follow the warriors into battle, singing of their bravery and encouraging them in their fight. At other times, they would interchange their patrons with praise songs about the great deeds of their ancestors, or they would even act as social historians, poets, and sometimes even jokers. So the tales told by the Igbo are usually accompanied by either a drum, a Mauritanian guitar called a fidinu, or even a harp-like instrument called an arda. And the Moors, like the Arab and other people of Africa, despise the Igbo and fear them as sorcerers. They're seen as political schemers and spies, and they're also thought to have powers that allow them to curse anyone who offends them, including tribal leaders, which is why everyone sort of hates them. And in the second half of the 20th century, they moved to urban areas for greater commercial value. Moving on to the final part of my presentation, storytelling in the Arab world nowadays. So our modern, fast-paced era seems to have moved so far past old traditions. But if you look closer, we realize that these traditions have only been modernized. The storytelling seed of Hakawati had been planted in Arab and Middle Eastern customs a very long time ago. And now it grows in diverse ways and reaches tens of thousands of listeners. So some of the ways in which Hakawati is being kept alive through Arab TV, as segments are on the news or sometimes even talk shows. In addition, the Hussain Festival in Oman is bringing back traditional stories for a younger audience. And the International Storytelling Festival in Sharjah, UAE, the United Arab Emirates, Tales on the Island, is promoting the Hakawati and other storytellers in the Arab world. Although the most well-known example of preserving storytelling is An-Nafura Cafe. So the 500-year-old cafe located in the old city of Damascus still keeps the tradition of Hakawati alive to this day. Abu Sami, who is a Syrian storyteller and Hakawati, performs at the cafe. He usually sits at its center and wears his traditional Damascus clothes with a small sword in his hand to thrill his listeners. So most of his stories are often featuring historical or fantasy characters and events. Stories of people doing good deeds where reality is mixed with fiction. Which leads me to the end of my presentation today. I leave you by saying that storytelling in the Arab world is being covered. It's still being covered. It is a means to pass down history, customs, and traditions. And to most people, a method of ingraining Arab values on the younger generation, and will hopefully continue to be preserved. So here are the references I used while I was putting my presentation together and any further reading if you are interested. Which leads me to the actual end of my presentation today. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope my presentation has helped cultivated your own curiosities and sort of helped you learn more about storytelling traditions of the Arab world and its unique, beautiful traditions. Thank you.